Hello, everyone. Welcome to Karma Insights. So we started this podcast because we really want to support organizations in being more agile for the changing environments that all of us are facing. And at the end of the day, we are trying to pull together fundamentally useful content for people where you can listen to this conversation and have some important takeaways that you can right away start implementing at your organization. So I want to introduce Nick Zemanek. He's one of our lead consultants, and we're going to be talking about knowledge management, knowledge transfers in the context of technology. And of course, this goes to other areas of businesses. But we have seen time and time again where there is not adequate knowledge management. And then when the time comes where someone's retiring or someone's taking a new opportunity or something else happens, that there is really little to no opportunity for knowledge transfer, and then the organization is left in the lurch. So I'll hand it over to you, Nick. Please give us a little bit of an overview about what you've been thinking about here on knowledge management and transferring knowledge between folks.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Christian. This is a topic that's pretty close to home just because I just rolled onto a new project and, went through this basically entire process of someone leaving who has, a lot of tribal knowledge, a lot of system knowledge, a lot of operational knowledge, been there for a long time. And then, obviously this new resource comes in. How do you extract and share that knowledge that this certain individual has? I know I've seen it multiple times at multiple places that I've been, whether it's, on a manufacturing plant floor or, in a consultant role or, in pharmaceuticals. There's always seems to be at least one or more people who, have certain knowledge that they're the only ones that have it. So, what is that process to get that knowledge, document it, and turn that individual knowledge into a shared knowledge throughout the organization.
So I appreciate that, Nick. So why don't we just start off? So what would you define as knowledge transfer?
Yeah, for sure. When you think about knowledge, of course, it's the understanding and wisdom and topics that somebody has in their brain, but it's also the things that they do. The activities that they perform every day, the ideas that they have. So, that's something to really keep in mind. Whereas it's not, for an effective knowledge transfer, it's not enough to just get down everything they have on paper. It's also capturing what they do, how they benefit and bring value to the organization, and making sure those pieces of information are transferred as well.
Mm. I think what comes up for me as I'm hearing you share that, Nick, is, a lot of the unsaid aspects of an individual's contributions to an organization, whether it be the relationships, whether it be some of the small things that someone might do that keeps an organization running, but it's really nothing that you write home about. They're keeping the organization moving, but you're not going to ever see it on a metrics report, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious how you've thought about this on the multiple levels, from the very obvious things to the less obvious things, and how you extract that knowledge from someone, for lack of better terms, and how you can effectively absorb that, but also, as you're saying, share it across the organization such that wherever possible, an organization is not in this situation again. Because at the end of the day, it's effectively a risk area. This is a risk mitigation, business continuity, planning strategy is how I've started to look at it.
Yeah, every task always isn't on a process flow, unfortunately. We've seen that. I think the first step is starting with the objectives that, talking about a specific individual, starting with the objectives that, they are responsible for meeting. So, taking an example of, a business analyst or, a system owner, what are the recurring tasks that get done on a daily basis that obviously they know, but in addition, the individuals in the organization know. So starting with the tasks that everyone knows, and having that very initial list that you can build on. Once you have that to go off of, you can move into a more interview knowledge transfer session where you're going over the processes that they perform, and also just extracting as much information that they have. They can actually distribute from their mind. As you go through different processes, you understand the nuances of each and the details of each, and certain things will come up. But it's really important to start with that initial list of objectives that you want to go through. And to that point, I think one of the things too, when you're transferring knowledge and a resource is departing, is you're pretty low on time, right? So there's kind of a few options. There's one instance, this resource might be transferring internally, which could be good, right? Because you could have access to them after they gave their 2 weeks, they're transferring to your group in 2 weeks, you could have access to them. But one of the things I think you might see in that instance is that they're already starting to get pulled by that new organization, getting pulled in different directions. So even though you might have access to them, after their 2 weeks is up, the access during that 2 weeks might not actually be 100%. So we see that sometimes. Now, if they're going to an external organization, they're leaving your company, that's obviously probably not going to have access to them after their departure date, but you will have more time to spend with them. I would assume that in most cases that pretty much full capacity in terms of being able to shadow their processes and meeting with them to understand their responsibilities, and transferring and capturing that knowledge.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so to recap, what I'm hearing you say is that the first step is really developing a topic coverage plan and really trying to be as expansive as possible. Probably, is one thing I'm hearing from you, and
Yep.
and to and I think that probably even the process of creating that topic coverage plan is very educational in and of itself, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to list everything out, then you're going to try to group it, and then you're going to try to simplify that list. And then I would even say you're going to try to prioritize that list. And then from there, once there's that prioritization, that seems like, all right, we have a basic high level plan of action here. Clearly, we would need to estimate some timelines and such to see what is actually realistic to capture, what can we or can we not get from other folks, who might be supplemental folks to support this, what are some key pieces of documentation that we have to create or try to gather. I imagine all of this has been a part of your thinking whenever you've had to do this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that list is going to drive your whole knowledge transfer process. Like you said, you have your list of topics to cover. Then you move into the knowledge transfer process, which we can talk about is a combination of knowledge transfer meeting sessions, shadowing if you have availability to them, as much day-to-day work as you can be involved in to see exactly what they're doing, the better. One of the big ways that in the past that we've been able to capture knowledge is through just knowledge transfer sessions. So going through the topic tracker, if there are steps that we need to go through and see, one of the real benefits that we found is if you have the capability with whatever meeting software you're using for screen recordings. So, Teams and Zoom and, whatever you're using, they generally have that ability. A video is, I don't know about you, but I know that's, if I want to learn something, I'm looking up a video on online to learn how to do it. So if you can have that, repository of video recordings for a lot of the large recurring tasks or topics in that topic tracker. You can always refer back to that. And meeting minutes, thinking about a recent project that I was on where we a resource was leaving. We had 2 weeks with the individual, hour-long knowledge transfer sessions. We ended up taking close to 30 pages of single-spaced meeting minutes. So, getting your fingers nice and loose, typing, furiously. And the goal is to get as much information down as you can while you are with that resource. And afterwards, after the meeting, or whether it's every day or every 2 days or every week, organize those meeting minutes into the topic tracker, refer back to where each topic was covered, creating your data, your meeting minutes, and then your topic tracker that you can kind of refer back to on where to find that.
Got it. Yeah, that was an impressive amount of notes on that knowledge transfer that I recall, and I think that kind of speaks to, there is this phase when we're holding those knowledge transfer sessions of basically being bombarded with more information than is feasible to actually absorb in that time frame, and that creates of course a short-term complexity, but also a long-term complexity. I think one question I have for you is that, practically speaking, that creates an issue then for how you keep these knowledge transfers focused, because they can also go to areas that are not as necessary. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you only have an allotted amount of time, right? You have your list of topics. I think the first piece, is at every session, list out the topics that you need to cover. It's really easy. So with your topic tracker, prioritizing each topic. So, letting that drive your knowledge transfer sessions. So making sure you're covering the most important topics first. For each knowledge transfer session, making sure that agenda of what you want to cover is very clear. Like, hey, I want to, cover these 3 topics today. It's very easy to say, okay, well, since we're doing this, since we're already looking at this, let's just go look at this, too. It's really easy to do that, especially, when there's just so much to absorb. But so, trying your best to really stay on task and, follow the priority of topics there.
Yeah, I'll also say that one thing I noticed that you did really, really well was you forced the discussion into practical areas of going into, in this instance, it was a system, but there could also be a process flow or a policy or a strategy, and literally looking at on the screen together and going through each piece and having a recording as we're looking at the screen kind of helps tie all the different ideas together. So that way it's contextually integrated, right?
For sure. Yeah, and the next piece to this all, so you have your notes, you have your topic tracker, you have your recordings, hopefully, or some combination of those. If you have your topic tracker and you refer back to the day that you took notes on a certain topic. So the next step is creating all of this information and putting it in a presentable, accessible, shared knowledge base that the replacement individual, but also the intention should be that your whole organization can now access this. I like to use OneNote. Seems to work really well in terms of a page or a certain folder for each of the big topic areas. And depending on if for this instance that we're referring to, it's a system, right? So kind of separated that into different support areas. One is the technical architecture. The other part is more on a program related information. Another part is the operations manual. So if somebody needed to perform operational tasks that is done by this individual. The steps to do that task is screenshots and everything in this big knowledge base that can always be referred back to. And from a knowledge transfer individual standpoint, individual to another individual, this is obviously great. But again, I think that really brings value when you're looking at creating a real shared knowledge organization where it's, even if this next person would leave, right? Well, you still have this knowledge base and all of these, all of this knowledge and data that the next person can refer to without having to go through, quite as much as a detailed knowledge transfer process.
I really like that. I appreciate that. I mean, I think that, OneNote worked really, really well for this. I'm sure a Google Doc can work well as well, and perhaps some other, Dropbox, Paper, whatever you might have. But at the end of the day, this idea of having this giant, like a big table of contents, operations manual, legal, how a software is released, the management and oversight and general FAQs. What comes up for me is, as all of this is being documented and the policies and procedures and decisions that were made are being put in here, is that it also gives the ability to start thinking more strategically about the role, such that we're not putting all our eggs in one basket, so to speak. If this is such a fault point for an organization where someone leaves and it can basically bring the organization to a halt, that's a problem, right? And this, in my mind, is really the first step to get out of that situation, such that, you have all of these knowledge base articles, and then you could give them to a couple of other folks to take on and to own, or even to do better backup processing, such that when that person goes on vacation who's taken this over, you don't have to worry. There's a place to exactly follow what needs to be done.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to that point, one of the following steps after this knowledge base was created was creating a backup plan. And, the backup plan becomes very easy at that point because you can just link back to this knowledge base for all of the topics. So again, further mitigating risk for, long-term and short-term departure.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. I think that what I'd be curious from you, Nick, is, now looking back on this knowledge transfer, this knowledge management process, and some of the things that you've learned in really supporting organizations in doing this, are there any final thoughts that you want to leave with folks, not only about maybe this process, but how they should be looking at, supporting their organizations in having, a strong foundation, or being more agile, or, being more resilient as times are always changing?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to wait for an employee or resource to leave to do a process like this. This case study was a pretty intense one, right? We only had it 2 weeks, but imagine, if your organization and you want to do this for 3 or 4 or a handful of systems you have over an entire year, and make these initiatives to for each system, you create a knowledge base like this, and then we have choose your repository software, right? SharePoint or Dropbox or whatever you choose, and start creating a shared knowledge base instead of having individuals be responsible for having all of this knowledge, and I guess remembering all of this knowledge too is a tough thing. Now that I have this knowledge base that's created, and now I'm supporting this system, it makes my life easier because I can just go and look up this task that I need to do that we might have covered during a half an hour or 20-minute discussion a couple months ago. I don't have to remember exactly every step of that. I just need to know that, hey, I have this knowledge base and I can go find it there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nick. I really, really appreciate your time discussing this topic. And thanks, everyone. We're gonna make sure that this is on the website. It'll also be in the links in the podcast notes. And we're actually trying to upload a bunch of templates and deliverables such that folks can easily access them on the website. So you should be able to take a look at that, and hopefully that can be of use to you. And if you have any questions, just send us a note at hello@karmaadvisory.com. Thanks, everyone.